Emily stood in her cozy dining room, arranging the centerpiece for the dinner she had planned. Tonight was special. It was the first time she was hosting a small, intimate meal for her daughter Claire and her husband Michael in her home. Emily had always taken pride in her home, making it warm and welcoming. But tonight she felt a flutter of unease she couldn't quite explain. Perhaps it was the weight of expectations, the hope that everything would be perfect. Or perhaps it was the strange tension she sensed whenever Michael was around. The doorbell rang, and Emily hurried to answer. Michael was there first, holding a bouquet of fresh lilies, his smile polite but warm. "Thank you for doing this, Emily," he said, handing her the flowers. She took them, noting that his eyes lingered on her a moment longer than usual. There was a softness there, a careful attention that made her feel noticed in a way she hadn't in years. Emily quickly shook off the thought. He was her daughter's husband, she reminded herself firmly. There was no room for anything else. Dinner began with light conversation and laughter. Claire was radiant, chatting about her new apartment, her work, and the excitement of early marriage. Michael listened attentively, occasionally glancing at Emily with that same intensity she had noticed earlier. He asked about her day, her projects, the flowers in the garden. The questions were polite, but his tone carried a curiosity that seemed deeper than casual interest. Emily found herself answering thoughtfully, feeling a strange connection forming that made her heart beat a little faster. She scolded herself silently, trying to push away the feeling. She was a mother. Michael was her daughter's husband. Nothing more could come of it. As they finished the meal, the conversation shifted to memories of past family events. Holidays spent together and funny incidents from when Claire was a child. Michael laughed easily, his voice softening when he told a story about Claire's childhood mischief. Emily felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with admiration for the man her daughter had chosen. He was kind, patient, and attentive. But tonight there was an extra warmth in his demeanor. After dinner, Claire excused herself to take a phone call, leaving Emily and Michael alone in the living room. The room felt suddenly quieter, and Emily realized the air between them had changed. Michael sat down across from her, hands resting lightly on his knees. "You've always made your home so inviting," he said, his voice low and sincere. Emily smiled politely, unsure how to respond. "Thank you, it's nothing really," she said softly, but the words felt inadequate. There was a pause, a quiet moment filled with unspoken thoughts. Emily noticed the way Michael's eyes held hers, steady and searching. He continued, "You've been through a lot, Emily. I admire how strong you are." The sincerity in his voice made Emily's chest tighten. Strength, recognition, respect. For a brief moment, she felt truly seen, acknowledged for her life's struggles and triumphs in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. She opened her mouth to respond, but just then Claire returned, her presence breaking the spell. The conversation ended, but Emily couldn't shake the memory of Michael's gaze. That night, as she lay in bed, she replayed the evening over and over in her mind, thinking about the intensity of his look, the softness in his voice, and the strange pull she felt toward him. It was confusing, even unsettling, but undeniably emotional. Emily tried to focus on her daughter's happiness. Claire was her priority, and she had no intention of letting herself dwell on thoughts that could create conflict. Yet the connection she had sensed with Michael lingered, subtle but persistent. It wasn't inappropriate, at least she hoped not, but it was there. The way he had looked at her, the care in his tone, the attentiveness in his gestures, all suggested a depth of feeling that went beyond simple politeness. She recalled the moment in the living room when they were alone. The way he had leaned slightly forward, resting his hands on his knees, eyes meeting hers in a way that felt personal and significant. The memory made her heart beat faster. It wasn't romantic in the traditional sense, at least not yet, but it carried an emotional weight that she couldn't ignore. There was admiration, respect, and perhaps a hint of longing in his gaze. And Emily found herself thinking about it long after the evening ended. Even the simple interactions during dinner had left a lasting impression. Michael's attentiveness, his careful listening, the way he asked about her life before Claret, all made Emily feel valued in a way she hadn't felt for years. It wasn't about attraction alone. It was about being seen, understood, and appreciated. And yet she couldn't help but wonder why the feelings stirred within her were so strong. Was it admiration, loneliness, or something more subtle, a connection that neither of them fully understood yet? Emily spent the next morning distracted, replaying each look, each word, each gesture. She caught herself thinking about Michael during breakfast, about how he had smiled at her, how he had listened to her stories, and how the evening had left her feeling both excited and conflicted. She reminded herself again that Michael was Claire's husband, and she must keep her boundaries clear. But the memory of his eyes, the gentleness of his voice, and the warmth of his attention lingered in her mind like a delicate thread she couldn't sever. Later, while organizing the kitchen, Emily received a text from an unknown number. She hesitated. Before opening it, heart pounding. The message was simple. I couldn't stop thinking about tonight. Can we talk tomorrow? Emily's hands trembled slightly as she read the words. She knew instantly it was Michael. But why would he send such a message? What could he possibly want to say? Her mind raced with possibilities, each one making her both anxious and curious. She didn't respond immediately, unsure how to handle the situation. The thought of speaking with him alone brought a strange mixture of anticipation and guilt. She reminded herself once again, he was her daughter's husband. This was delicate territory, and any misstep could harm the people she loved most. Yet Emily couldn't ignore the feeling that something important was unfolding. The connection between her and Michael, subtle though it was, had shifted something in her heart. It wasn't romantic in the sense of forbidden love, was emotional, intimate, and profound. She felt understood, appreciated, and seen in a way she hadn't in years. And Michael, she realized, seemed to feel it too. The unspoken acknowledgement of each other's presence, the quiet admiration, and the gentle emotional tension made the evening unforgettable. The following hours passed slowly. Emily found herself replaying every detail, the way Michael's eyes had lingered, the softness in his tone, the genuine curiosity in his questions. Even when Claire was present, she noticed the subtle ways Michael looked at her, brief but unmistakable, full of attention and perhaps a hint of admiration. Emily's emotions were complicated. She felt warmth, connection, and a quiet thrill, tempered by the knowledge that she must respect boundaries. By the time evening came again, Emily was both anxious and restless. The thought of speaking to Michael alone lingered in her mind. She wondered what he wanted to discuss, what had prompted the text. The emotional tension built steadily, a quiet undercurrent beneath the surface of her daily life. It was not reckless or inappropriate teat, was human, real, and deeply emotional. The anticipation of the conversation, the unspoken feelings, and the subtle intensity of their connection created a delicate drama that neither of them fully understood yet. As she prepared for the evening, Emily reflected on the unexpected way Michael's attention had affected her. It wasn't just admiration, it was validation, a recognition of her strength, her life experiences, and her capacity to care deeply. For a mother who had dedicated years to her daughter's happiness, this acknowledgement from another adult, someone close to her family, was powerful. It stirred emotions she had long suppressed, feelings of being seen and appreciated as an individual, not just as a parent. When the evening came and Michael arrived, Emily felt a flutter of anticipation. She greeted him with a polite smile, but underneath her heart raced. She remembered his text, the promise of a conversation, and the quiet moments from the previous night. She tried to steady herself, knowing she must approach the situation with care and awareness. Boundaries were essential, yet the emotional pull between them was undeniable, subtle, and profoundly human. That night, as Emily lay in bed, she thought about the connection she felt with Michael. It was emotional, gentle, and deeply moving. It was not about romance in the explicit sense. It was about acknowledgement, understanding, and shared humanity. She realized that life sometimes offered unexpected emotional connections that were not easy to define, yet impossible to ignore. The story ends part 1 on a soft cliffhanger. Emily had received the message from Michael, leaving her heart racing, her mind full of questions, and her emotions stirred in ways she had not anticipated. What would he want to say? Could they speak freely without crossing boundaries? The anticipation hung in the air, delicate yet compelling, ready to unfold in the next chapter of their story. The next morning, Emily woke with a sense of nervous anticipation. The text from Michael still lingered in her mind. I couldn't stop thinking about tonight. Can we talk tomorrow? She didn't know what to make of it. Part of her wanted to ignore it entirely, to protect herself and her daughter from any possible misunderstanding. Yet another part of her felt an undeniable pull, a curiosity she couldn't dismiss. She reminded herself firmly, Michael was Claire's husband. Boundaries had to be respected, but the human heart rarely listens to reason alone. Breakfast was a quiet affair. Claire chatted brightly about her work schedule and weekend plans, oblivious to the tension Emily felt simmering beneath the surface. Michael poured coffee, occasionally glancing at Emily with a careful attentiveness. Every small gesture, every subtle look, seemed amplified in Emily's mind. She noticed the warmth in his smile, the way he lingered for a moment longer than necessary when asking about her day. It was gentle, respectful, yet emotionally charged. Emily's pulse quickened, and she found herself momentarily lost in the depth of his gaze. Later that morning, Emily busied herself with chores, trying to focus on tasks rather than thoughts. She folded laundry, wiped counters, and arranged flowers in vases. But the anticipation of meeting Michael for the conversation he had hinted at distracted her at every turn. What could he want to talk about? Surely, it was something innocent perhaps. Gratitude or family matters, but the text carried a tone that left her both anxious and intrigued. In the afternoon, Emily decided to step into the garden for some fresh air, hoping the crisp breeze would clear her mind. Michael appeared shortly after, casually carrying a small box of old photographs he had discovered while visiting their home the previous week. He smiled warmly at her. I thought you might like to see these, he said, handing her the box. The simple gesture carried weight. As if he were inviting her into a private world she hadn't been part of before, Emily accepted the box, her fingers brushing his ever so slightly. She felt a shiver at the contact but quickly reminded herself of the boundaries. She opened the box and began flipping through photographs. Black and white images of family gatherings, snapshots of Claire as a child, and pictures of Emily and Michael at past events. Michael watched her quietly, his expression soft and thoughtful. These are amazing, Emily said, her voice low. I hadn't seen some of these in years. She noticed the way Michael's eyes followed her, attentive and almost reverent. There was admiration there, a careful acknowledgement of her presence. Emily felt a surge of warmth and something deeper in emotional intimacy that was rare and profound. Michael finally spoke, breaking the silence. I've always wanted to know more about you, Emily. Not just as Claire's mother, but about your life, your experiences. I feel like there's so much I haven't seen. His words were simple, but they carried an emotional weight that made Emily's chest tighten. She hesitated for a moment, then decided to speak openly. She shared stories of her youth, the struggles she had faced raising Claire on her own, the joys and heartbreaks that had shaped her into the woman she was today. Michael listened intently, nodding, occasionally asking gentle questions. His attentiveness made Emily feel truly heard, appreciated for the first time in a long while. Was not romantic in the explicit sense, but the connection was undeniable. Hours passed in a quiet, intimate conversation. They spoke of childhood dreams, life lessons, and the little moments that made life meaningful. Michael shared his own struggles, moments of doubt and fear, and Emily found herself empathizing deeply. There was a mutual understanding between them, a recognition of resilience and shared humanity. The emotional bond they were forming was delicate, respectful, and profoundly moving. As the sun began to set, Emily felt a mixture of relief and longing. The conversation had been cathartic, illuminating, and yet left her feeling vulnerable. Michael stood up, brushing off his hands. "Thank you for sharing this with me," he said softly. "I feel closer to you now in a way I didn't expect." Emily smiled, a tear threatening to escape. "I feel the same," she admitted. Her voice was gentle, sincere. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The emotional intensity between them was palpable, a quiet understanding that neither fully expressed, but both deeply felt. Just then, Claire called from the kitchen, asking if dinner would be ready soon. The spell was broken. Michael gave Emily one last look, soft and lingering, then turned toward Claire. The ordinary rhythm of family life resumed, but the connection from their conversation remained. Quiet but insistent. That night, Emily lay, awake in her bedroom, replaying the day in her mind. She thought about the way Michael had listened, the patience in his tone, and the care evident in his gestures. The emotional intimacy of the day had stirred feelings she hadn't expected, feelings of admiration, respect, and a gentle longing that was not romantic in a forbidden sense, but profoundly moving. She thought about the delicate line they were walking. He was her daughter's husband, and she was a mother devoted to her child's happiness. Yet, in those private moments, a deep human connection had formed, one based on understanding, empathy, and emotional resonance. It was not inappropriate. It was real, human, and beautifully complicated. The following days were filled with quiet tension. Emily noticed Michael's attentiveness more keenly than ever. The way he asked about her day, the subtle warmth in his smile, the thoughtful gestures, they all hinted at a depth of feeling beyond simple politeness. Emily kept herself busy, arranging home projects and spending time with Claire, but she could not ignore the emotional pull. One afternoon, as Emily tended the garden, Michael appeared again. This time, he carried a small potted plant, a delicate orchid with white blossoms. "I thought this would brighten your garden," he said, offering it to her. Emily accepted it, noticing the care in his expression, the genuine thoughtfulness. It was a simple act, yet it spoke volumes. It was not a romantic overture, but it was intimate in a quiet, respectful way. They spoke briefly about gardening, sharing tips and stories about favorite plants. Emily felt a sense of comfort in his presence, a calm, emotional connection that was both soothing and energizing. It was a bond built on shared understanding, gentle attention, and emotional sincerity. Later that evening, Emily received another message from Michael. "I hope you don't think I'm being forward. I just wanted to say, you mean a lot to me in ways I can't fully explain. Can we meet in the garden tomorrow at sunset?" Her heart raced. The message was carefully worded, thoughtful, and respectful, yet it carried a weight of emotion she could not ignore. She knew boundaries had to be maintained, yet the desire to understand what he truly meant tugged at her. It was a delicate situation full of emotional complexity, and she felt both excitement and trepidation. The next evening, Emily stood in the garden at sunset, the golden light casting a soft glow over the flowers, carrying a small lantern to illuminate the space. They greeted each other with polite smiles, yet beneath the surface was a quiet acknowledgement of the shared emotions that had developed over the past days. "I wanted to speak with you privately," Michael said, his voice calm but earnest. "Not about Claire, not about family. It's just about us, as people who care about each other and understand each other." His words were simple, yet full of depth. Emily felt a wave of emotion, recognizing the sincerity in his tone. They spoke, quietly in the garden, sharing thoughts, feelings, and reflections. There was no explicit romance, no inappropriate advances, just emotional honesty, vulnerability, and a mutual understanding that transcended ordinary conversation. Michael expressed admiration for Emily's strength, wisdom, and resilience. While Emily acknowledged the care and attentiveness he had shown, the conversation stretched long into the evening, filled with laughter, quiet moments, and gentle smiles. Emily realized how deeply meaningful these interactions had become, how rare it was to find someone who truly listened and saw her for who she was. The emotional intimacy they shared was safe, respectful, and profoundly human. As night fell, Emily felt a mixture of contentment and uncertainty. The connection with Michael had grown, deepened, and yet remained unspoken in the traditional sense. It was a bond built on respect, understanding, and quiet admiration. The feelings were intense, emotional, and deeply moving, but they were safe for the boundaries of family and friendship. The story ends part 2 on a gentle cliffhanger. As Michael prepared to leave the garden, he turned to Emily one last time and said softly, "Thank you for letting me see you." "Really see you?" Emily smiled, her heart full, yet aware of the delicate line they walked. The night closed with a sense of possibility, emotional resonance, and the quiet knowledge that their connection had changed something inside both of them forever.